Welcome to NarrativeNook audio tales where enchanted stories come to life. If you enjoy our stories, please subscribe, like and share to support our channel. Enjoy listening. Nicole's voice sounded from the other end of the line. It's the tuition fee one of my friends gave me for teaching them martial arts. So that's why, they thought. The two nodded now that their doubts had been cleared. Both of them agreed that Nicole had impressive martial arts skills. While receiving a diamond sounded excessive, it was normal for her to be admired by people. Lulu then added, "Snow and rain have gotten it restored. Nicole, don't be bothered by their actions. They're not worth your mental health." Nicole lifted the corner of her lips in the dark. "All right, I won't." Nicole heard their shallow breathing beside her. The two seemed to have let go of their worries and had fallen fast asleep. She did not feel sleepy. After some thought, she switched on the black-colored phone. The moment she switched on the phone, a message popped up on the screen. Nicole opened the notification. It was a message asking her when she had the time to meet and chat. The person had signed off the text with the initial C. "Carl is back in Macrunia," she wondered. Nicole's expression changed slightly before reverting to a calm one. Macrunia is basically Carl's home country. Staying there would guarantee his life and safety to the greatest extent, she thought. She quickly typed up a response on the phone. The person on the other end promptly replied with an OK emoji. Nicole didn't respond to the message and quickly switched off the phone. She quietly lay on the bed. She was feeling a mixture of emotions. Perhaps it was because she had lifted a load off her chest. This time, Nicole fell asleep quickly and had a dream. Her dream reeked of blood. She had been kidnapped to an unknown place on a mountain and was showing signs of dehydration. She could actually feel her parched throat. She heard a familiar voice coming from a faraway distance. The voice had lost whatever gentleness it had in the past and seemed extraordinarily high-pitched. "Rich people are too stubborn. I guess we'll have to do something. Don't blame me, Nikki. They're the ones who are heartless. You must go seek revenge from them if you feel any resentment." Nicole felt a hard object pressed against the back of her head as he spoke. The Nicole back then was a naive little girl, but the Nicole today was most familiar with this feeling. "It's the feeling of a gun pressed up against you," she thought. The man sneered when he saw her not put up a fight. He slowly unlatched the safety lever on his gun while watching the weak little prey in front of him. The sinister smile on his lips gradually grew wider. "She's a mere child. I alone am more than enough to finish her off," he thought. She could clearly hear the sound of the man reloading the pistol. The man's laughter slowly faded away. It was at that moment that Nicole shut her eyes. She knew things were about to go down. What happened to Nicole? Why did she suddenly increase my laps to 25? Can a human run this many laps? He thought. Zeke looked at Nicole, who was holding a stopwatch in the distance. At first, he would make silly faces at her. In the end, he was so tired he could barely lift an arm. Regardless, humans indeed have unlimited potential. Zeke managed to finish running 25 laps. He wiped away the sweat on his forehead with the towel on his neck. At the same time, he looked at Nicole and asked exasperatedly between pants, "Nicole, what's up with you today? Why did I have to run 10 extra laps?" Nicole gave him an indifferent look before turning away. Zeke was confused when he did not hear any response from her. When he lifted his head, he saw that she had already walked quite some distance away. He quickly chased after her. "Hey, Nicole. Don't be so heartless." Nicole ignored him. Her eyes glinted as she glanced at the sky that was now bright. She did not speak. "That's because there isn't much time left," she thought. "I need to help Zeke get stronger as soon as possible," she thought again. In the end, Zeke did not get any answers. He dragged his feet back to his campus. He did not have many friends. Most people did not bother sparing him a glance. Zeke lowered his eyes coldly. He did not want to be around these commoners either. To him, only Nicole was his partner and good friend. Nicole previously said we would take things step by step, but she suddenly sped up our training process. Something is definitely going to happen, he thought. But I don't know anything about it, he thought again. Zeke took out his computer and sat in the corner. That corner was the camera's blind spot, so no one could see what he had on his computer screen. He opened the Hunters. To his surprise, the post that offered a $10 million reward in exchange for the identity Lucifer had disappeared. Zeke frowned in confusion but quickly figured out what was wrong. The person must have realized how futile it was. He was not bothered. While he skimmed through the recent posts, one of the pinned missions caught his attention. It had a skeleton icon, indicating that it was a mission posted by a senior hacker. The person seemed to be asking the elites to set up a defense network to prevent data leaks. Interesting, he thought. Zeke sent the mission details to Nicole. Nicole did not respond. However, Zeke did not get annoyed and looked at the screenshots instead. His expression started to change. He seemed to have seen this icon back at home before. During a mission one time, Carlo injured his right leg badly. When they brought him back, his leg was already infected and rotting. Carlo yelled at the military doctor when he said that amputation was the only solution. He then made a phone call while holding onto the pain. Soon after, a helicopter landed. Several special force personnel that he had never seen before ran out. They were holding medical kits with the letter F on them. Carlo was taken away after he was given drugs and injections. When he returned, he was once again the strong father that he knew. That F he saw had a similar minimalistic and cold feeling to this icon. Zeke stared at the F. His gaze started to turn cloudy. He accepted the mission and quickly got a response from the other end. "How confident are you? Hold on, Spectre." Zeke did not choose to stay anonymous. He revealed his hacker name to increase his chances of getting the mission. "How bad is it?" The person on the other end paused. It seemed as if the person found it hard to tell him what they had achieved with their ability. It took them a few seconds to type up a single message. Zeke stared at his response with a solemn expression. "It might crash any time. The backup defense system will last at most 3 days." Zeke's hands were busy. He quickly realized that the task required him to be on site. He had to be there to operate the system unit. He gritted his teeth. "Send me the address." Nicole was now back in class. She noticed that everyone was looking at her strangely. Unlike the previous times, few were giving her scornful gazes. Nicole did not care about what they thought. She went to her seat and quickly took out a question bank book. Many things have happened, but Nicole continued to work hard on the math question bank book. She speedily worked on the math problems. After all, the math Olympiad was soon. She gently twirled her pen. Her thoughts were as fast as lightning. She instantly thought of a method to solve the problem. Nicole was on the last page of the book. She lifted her head before closing the book. There was a sea of people surrounding her. They were all looking at her with eager eyes. Nicole asked resignedly, "What's the matter?" They all looked at each other and started forming a line to apologize. Nicole sighed. She looked at the sea of people in front of her and frowned. "It's good that my brothers have helped me clear my name, but having these people apologize to me is so troublesome," she thought. Thankfully, she was saved by the bell. Nicole breathed a sigh of relief as the people left reluctantly. Gary was sitting in the last row. He had been wanting to speak to Nicole. However, he could only make out Nicole's figure due to the crowd. How could I let go of my reputation and squeeze through the crowd simply to speak to Nicole? He thought. In the end, Gary still gave up. He quietly returned to his seat. However, there was an indistinguishable glint in his eyes. Vivian was sitting in the front row. Her eyes glinted darkly when she noticed his actions. Nicole truly seizes every opportunity to make herself stand out, she thought. She took out her phone and sent out a text under her desk. Only then did she feel like she had control of the situation again. Everyone in the class was looking at Nicole a little differently from before. Those who mocked Nicole quieted down when they thought of the 25-carat purple diamond that fell from her drawer. That piece of diamond is worth more than all of my parents' fortune combined. Yet, Nicole does not care, they thought. At the thought of this, many of them decided to join the Nicole apology queue after class. Ego means nothing, they thought. Ms. Emerson walked into the class on time. Nicole did not care about what others thought and carefully opened the last page of the question bank book. She was preparing to learn the final bit of knowledge. After all, once she finishes this book, there won't be any left. The other participants would probably die of shock if they knew how Nicole was preparing for the competition. She's reluctant to solve a difficult problem and had saved it for the last. Ms. Emerson thought. She had a smile in her eyes when she noticed what Nicole was doing. Nicole is such an interesting person, she thought again. After class, Ms. Emerson called Gary and Nicole over to the lecture podium. She spoke to them in a low voice. The math Olympiad was happening soon, so she wanted to know how their preparations were going. Gary had seen Nicole's blank question bank book at the cafe yesterday. He could not help but think, even though Nicole is good at racing, she still has trouble solving a math Olympiad problem. Anyway, why did Ms. Emerson ask such a question when the two of us are present? Isn't she worried about Nicole feeling awkward? He wondered. He replied casually, "It's going okay." Ms. Emerson understood that this meant he felt confident. She then looked at Nicole expectantly. "Nicole, how's your preparation going?" Nicole looked at Ms. Emerson calmly. "I've solved all of them." Nicole had never participated in a math Olympiad back in San Giotto, so she did not know if she was well prepared. However, the smile on Ms. Emerson's face indicated that she was doing fine. Ms. Emerson handed Nicole 3 more exercise books. They were all past-year math Olympiad questions that could not be found on the market. The third book, in particular, was Declan Hancock's best work. In their school, only she and Mr. Lewis, the 2 teachers in charge of the math Olympiad training, got their hands on 2 copies of the book. She did not expect Nicole to complete all 3 sets of the questions without any guidance. "I underestimated Nicole," she thought. Ms. Emerson nodded satisfactorily and asked Gary to leave. She wanted to speak to Nicole privately. Gary frowned. He had seen Nicole's book, and it was completely blank. He could not understand how Nicole dared to spout nonsense like how she had solved all of the math problems to Ms. Emerson. The charming image that he had of her from yesterday's race club meetup was gone. She was once again the annoying liar. Gary did not say anything but snorted. He headed back to his seat without sparing Nicole a glance. When Vivian witnessed the scene unfold, she had a look of glee in her eyes. Her eyes unconsciously followed Gary in hopes to have some form of interaction with him. Unfortunately, Gary did not look her way. His eyes were filled with rage toward Nicole. He simply walked past her without sparing her a glance. Vivian tightly gripped the hem of her dress under her desk. She looked at Nicole, who had gained Ms. Emerson's favor. She was furious. Ms. Emerson then told Nicole about the things she needed to watch out for during the math Olympiad. After all, Gary had been through the competition many times. On the other hand, Nicole seemed to lack the experience. She naturally had to tell her the rules of the competition. In the end, Ms. Emerson repeated the part where participants had to write their answers with a black pen. Nicole looked at her with a serious expression and said softly, "Don't worry, Ms. Emerson. I'll ace it." She knew Ms. Emerson was doing this for her own good. Ms. Emerson was treating her as if she were a child. She found it amusing and heartwarming at the same time. Ms. Emerson also knew that she was going overboard. She looked embarrassed and stopped talking about the competition. She then looked at Nicole with a smile and said, "By the way, the monthly test is in 2 days. All the best with your test." Nicole nodded. She answered with a quiet yet oddly calming voice, "I will." Ms. Emerson looked at her and felt gratified. Just as she was about to leave, she suddenly slapped her forehead as if she had just remembered something. She turned to Nicole with a smile and said, "I'm so forgetful. Your grandma's here to see you, Nicole. I told your family to wait outside. I ended up forgetting after speaking to you. Grandma's here," she thought. Nicole's cold eyes lit up a little. She quickly thanked Ms. Emerson and headed out of the classroom. "Now that I think about it, I haven't seen Grandma for almost a month," she thought. Nicole stepped out of the classroom and saw 2 people standing by the window. One of them was an old woman. She had graying hair and was donned in green-colored garments. That person was Mrs. Wallace Sr. When Mrs. Wallace Sr. saw Nicole walk out of the classroom, her cloudy eyes lit up. She quickly walked over to Nicole. Nicole watched as Mrs. Wallace Sr. gradually got closer. Her cold gaze started to turn to one that was soft. She held Mrs. Wallace Sr.'s bony hands and said in a low voice, "What are you doing here, Grandma?" Mrs. Wallace Sr. looked at the granddaughter she raised single-handedly and smiled. She then patted her arm and said, "I missed you. Coincidentally, your class teacher wanted to see you as well, so he brought me along." Only then did Nicole notice the middle-aged man standing beside her. The man did not have a chance to join the conversation. He was her previous class teacher, Mr. Mills. She did not expect him to be able to continue working at their school. Nicole gave him a once-over when she saw his tightly clasped hands. He was sweating buckets and seemed as though he had trouble speaking his mind. Nicole instantly knew what he was doing here. Before her brothers left Great Oak, they mentioned that they would donate a sum of money to expand the campus. Mr. Mills must have been sent by the headmaster to ask for investments. It hasn't even been a month. They really are a bunch of opportunists, she thought. Mr. Mills had always been scared of Nicole. Ever since Nicole crossed the headmaster, the two of them had been ignoring her. There were even times when he tried to kick her out of school. He managed to stay by using the excuses that he had taught Nicole for many years and that he would wait for their family's investment. However, Nicole's family had not contacted the school since she left. As a result, he could only look for Mrs. Wallace Sr. and bring her along with him to look for Nicole in San Joto. In reality, he did not like Nicole at all. Even though he was her class teacher, they were now nothing more than strangers. He was worried that Nicole would ignore him. For that reason, he did not know what to say now that he was looking at Nicole. He had no idea how to bring up the matter of investment. Nicole was not affected by Mr. Mills' flattery. She did not want to waste her time on him. She said bluntly, "Mr. Mills, tell the headmaster that the money will be transferred to his bank account really soon." The weight on Mr. Mills' chest was instantly lifted. His expression kept on shifting. He did not know if he was supposed to feel grateful or express his gratitude. In the end, Mr. Mills could only say, "We're much obliged, Nicole." MHM. Nicole accepted his gratitude and did not continue exchanging pleasantries with him. Mr. Mills was stunned. Nicole is still so cold even after moving to San Joto. If she manages to do well in San Joto in the future, even pigs can fly, he thought angrily. I intended to show her around Royal Creek Institute. I've never seen such a breathtaking campus. Moreover, this place is huge. It took me forever to find the teaching and learning complex, he thought again. Nicole did not pay Mr. Mills any mind. She applied for leave and prepared to take her grandmother out for a meal. After that, she would return to the Riddle family's house. Mrs. Wallace Sr. was confused about why Nicole was so cold to Mr. Mills. She looked at her granddaughter and fell into thought. Then, she turned to Mr. Mills and said, "Mr. Mills, is there a reason you're still here?" He told her that he wanted to see Nicole. Now that he had seen her, he could tell her whatever he wanted to say. Of course, Mr. Mills was here for something. He flushed and could say nothing, but thinking to himself that Nicole and her grandma were birds of a feather, as they both talked in such a way that it often mortified him. "I'm fine. Please get on with your things. I will just look around the Royal Creek Institute's campus alone," he said in a low voice. Nicole was standing beside Mrs. Wallace Sr. and glanced at Mr. Mills with a smirk, then said coldly, "Then I'll go with Grandma now. You have a good time, Mr. Mills." After saying so and without looking back, Nicole helped her grandmother to her classroom to get her school bag. This time, not even Mrs. Wallace Sr. looked back at Mr. Mills. Mr. Mills stood on the spot, only to feel that Nicole had changed when she came to San Joto, and had become so difficult to reason with, and that she had started to disrespect him just because she was a member of the Riddle family. He looked at Nicole with resentment before turning around and walking out. Nicole was back in the classroom, packing her things into the school bag. Many of her classmates gawked at Mrs. Wallace Sr., who was outside the classroom. They had never seen someone in such ragged clothes before, as their parents were all well dressed. One of the boys chuckled. He was sitting to Nicole's diagonal front and saw Mrs. Wallace Sr. even had a patch on her clothes. He whispered his discovery to those around him, and soon it spread like wildfire, and everyone in the classroom started to gape at Mrs. Wallace Sr. with a hint of mockery in their eyes. "Nicole, Who is this homeless person? Why did you bring someone like her to school? Nicole's hand, carrying the school bag, froze in motion. She turned back to look at the boy, who was sitting in the third row, studying well, but prone to judge people by their appearance. Hearing his words, Nicole's face instantly turned frosty. She put down her school bag and walked toward him, giving the boy a bone-chilling stare, as if there were countless ice spikes piercing into his blood. She stood in front of the boy with an indifferent look in her eyes. "Apologize to my grandma," she said. They did not know that the old lady was Nicole's grandmother. They all had a deploring look on their faces, wondering why the old lady was dressed this way and did not look having anything to do with the Riddle family. In their eyes, such a person was no different from a beggar. But Nicole said this old lady was her grandmother. They wondered if Nicole was not afraid of being mocked, too. Standing at the side, June held her hand tightly. She could understand the feeling too well, as she looked at Mrs. Wallace Sr.'s helpless look and seemingly saw the helpless and wronged expression on her mother's face when her mother sent her to school and got ostracized by the rich parents. June stood up in defiance of the disgusted glances of those people and walked toward Mrs. Wallace Sr. with a gentle smile. "Are you here to see Nicole? We always hear Nicole talk about you, and today we finally see you in person." Mrs. Wallace Sr. looked at the gentle girl. Feeling a little at ease, she returned a smile. Just then, a voice saying malicious words came. It was a boy in the back row, muttering in a low voice, trying to place nice. "You all are just the same." Right after he said that, someone punched him in the left cheek. The boy was punched so hard that he fell right next to the desk with bruises on his left face. "Who the hell hit me? I'll grind your treacherous bones to dust." He did not say the last sentence because he saw Jack, who had a half smile across from him. He put a hand to his face and looked at Jack with consternation. "Why did you hit me, Jack?" Jack's family was a self-made millionaire, so he did not feel that there was anything wrong with hard work and simplicity, and he hated to see people bullying those who had no money. He was offended when the boy even had the nerve to ask him why. He looked at the boy with a smirk and said in an icy voice, "You think you're above others and could look down on others just because you have money?" Everyone was equal. Those who thought one was less worthy than the other knew nothing better. The boy dared not say anything, as he knew he had rubbed Jack the wrong way and quickly apologized. Jack did not play nice but kicked the boy in the leg, and then he said in an icy voice, "What's the use of apologizing to me when you use that stinky mouth of yours to denigrate others? Shouldn't you apologize to the other person to show your sincerity?" The boy heard this and spun around and apologized to June and Mrs. Wallace Sr. "I'm really sorry, I knew nothing better and talked nonsense." "Mrs. Wallace, June, I'm sorry." Whether or not he was forced to do this, his attitude was satisfying. Jack looked at Mrs. Wallace Sr. with inquiring eyes. Mrs. Wallace Sr. had seen nothing like this. But she did not want to embarrass Nicole, so she said gently, "I don't blame you, kid, it's okay to pass comments about me, but you shouldn't do that to your classmate." She then looked at June with a gentle smile. June could feel Mrs. Wallace Sr.'s kindness. She did not care what those people said, as she had heard enough. At this moment, the boy in the third row almost fell off the stool as Nicole approached. "Don't come near. Otherwise, I'll have your guts for garters." Many people heard what the boy said and looked curious. He should have quickly begged Nicole for mercy instead. Everyone had seen how badass Nicole was. The boy could spare himself a lot of suffering if he apologized now. But to everyone's surprise, the boy looked at Nicole's expression and brazened it out, shouting, "Isn't she a beggar when she's wearing patched clothes? Who are you to tell me to apologize?" Seeing that he was so bullheaded, Nicole said faintly with no expression on her face, "It's sad enough to define someone else just by a patch on the clothes." The boy heard what Nicole said and was stunned for half a second, then wanted to hit Nicole. "How dare you say this about me?" He came from a family with some background. These people were afraid of the Riddle family, but not him. Nicole did not want to get into a fight in front of Mrs. Wallace Sr., so she frowned at the sight of what the boy did. Just when she was slightly hesitant, someone suddenly reached out a hand and caught the boy's hand. The boy's face reddened as he could not move a bit but gasped like a cow. Nicole looked in surprise when she saw the person standing in front of her was none other than Gary. Gary looked at the boy, who taunted the old lady simply based on how she dressed, and felt sickened by his character. At first, the boy was still swearing and cursing, but when he looked up and saw that it was Gary, words choked in his throat. Gary. Vivian was sitting not far away. When she looked back and saw what happened, her face instantly turned grave. Gary had never been so blatantly biased toward anyone. She was so angry that she wanted to stand up, but she resisted and took out her mobile phone and angrily sent a message to Harvey. Nicole looked at Gary in puzzlement. She thought Gary did not like her all along, yet he was now helping her. Gary did not look at Nicole. Instead, he turned his attention to Mrs. Wallace Sr., who was not far away, and then said to the boy, "Apologize to the old lady." His voice was so frosty, and he looked so angry that the boy trembled in fear. As much as the boy was not afraid of the Riddle family, he did not dare to offend Gary. Nicole raised an eyebrow as she watched on. Her expression did not change, but her eyes looked icy. Being started at by Gary and Nicole, the boy could say nothing again. He had no choice but to look back at Mrs. Wallace Sr. "I'm sorry," he said in whisper. Gary looked impatient, as he was not too happy with how soft the apology was. He let go of the boy's hand, and while the boy thought he had regained his freedom, he kicked the boy in the back, sending him staggering forward and falling face down on the ground in front of Mrs. Wallace Sr. When the boy was terrified and tried to get up, he heard Gary's extremely cold voice coming from behind. "I'm going to give you another chance to apologize properly." The warning undertone was unsatisfiable. The boy could not complain. Without changing his posture, he looked at the boy in front of her, and then at Nicole, and Nicole gave her a look that said, "It's your call." Mrs. Wallace Sr. then walked over and helped the boy up, then bent down to dust the dirt on his knees and said with an avuncular face, "I don't blame you, but I hope you don't do this again." In Mrs. Wallace Sr.'s eyes, these kids were still young, and it was only to make some harmless mistakes, as long as they did not go astray. Most of the wealthy families had a strict mindset of social class distinction, and the boy had never received such treatment as the elders had given him in his own family. He was so stunned that he froze with a look of helplessness and confusion in his eyes. The boy was surprised by what happened. He was expecting to receive humiliation or severe reprimand, yet such a shabby-dressed old lady gave him the warmest feeling in his 18 years of life. Nicole walked over, held Mrs. Wallace Sr., and looked gratefully at June. She then picked up her school bag on the desk, turned around, and left with Mrs. Wallace Sr. It was only as she walked past Jack and Gary that she whispered a thank you to them. Her voice was not loud, but it was just the two of them could hear it. They had not been nice to her all this time, but Nicole did not mind. At last, they had helped her grandmother, and she thanked them sincerely. When the two of them heard Nicole say thank you in a clear and charming voice, they were both shocked. Gary, in particular, looked on with a faint emotion gradually surging into tidal waves in his eyes as Nicole went. He did not know that it was so easy to earn her gratitude. A smile gradually spread across his face. Jack scratched his chin and felt a little strange, as this was the first time that Nicole was so gentle to him, and it felt good. Wayne, who had just gone out to the toilet, had now returned and was confused by the strange atmosphere in the classroom. He wondered why Gary stood there and smiled like an idiot. Of course, he did not dare say that. Wayne looked at Jack, who looked no less silly, and gently nudged him with his arm. What just happened? He wondered why the two of them became motionless, like sculptures. Jack hissed as his ribs were sensitive. Wayne's nudge almost undid what he had done. Looking at the culprit in front of him, he said tardily, "Nothing. Our icy queen has just thanked me." Wayne had no words when he heard Jack describe what happened. But he quickly reacted to who he was talking about, and his eyes widened in disbelief. "What did you say?" he exclaimed so loud that everyone in the class looked at him. Wayne felt embarrassed and lowered his volume. "Why would Nicole want to thank you?" Jack looked at the dumpy guy with an evil face. "Not only me. Nicole has also thanked Gary." "What? I thought Gary and Nicole didn't see eye to eye. Why did Nicole thank him? What the hell happened? I was just going to the toilet for a while, and now it seems that I've missed a lot." Wayne turned to Gary, wanting to ask him. But Gary had walked back to his place to pack up his things, with a hint of delight on his face. "Gary, what did you do to Nicole that she thanked you?" Wayne asked cautiously. Gary looked at him and raised an eyebrow nonchalantly. I've just spoken up for her grandmother." He did not expect it to have such a huge effect. Wayne was even more puzzled when he learned that Nicole's grandmother had come to his school. But when he saw the impatient look on Gary's face, he stopped asking. Gary was brisk in his action as he casually flung the school bag onto his shoulder. The bag looked empty, as if it contained only a piece of clothing. He then strode out of the classroom. Seeing Gary leave, the boy who had first discovered the patch on the clothes of Nicole's grandmother rushed to the boy, whom Gary had fixed, and comforted him. "Are you okay?" The two of them seemed to be best friends, but in fact, the first boy did not regard the second one as his good friend at all, but just a pawn. When he hinted at the second boy of his disdain for Nicole's grandmother just now, the second boy had quickly echoed his viewpoint. The two of them were the best partners. The second boy heard him asking with concern and shook his head gently, signaling that he was all right. Seeing that his companion had returned to normal, he breathed a sigh of relief. He was really worried that this obedient follower of his would leave him just now, but seeing that he was okay just like last time, he was relieved. He put his hand around the second boy's shoulders as a show of affinity. "That old lady is a beggar through and through. I wonder if Gary has smoked some weed or something." He even spoke up for a broke, lowly person. He thought he could hear the boy echo what he said, not expecting that the boy smacked off his hand, and then glared at him. "Don't let me hear you say bad things about Nicole's grandma again." After saying that, the boy sat back in his seat and ignored him. Jack was in the back, looking at what happened and raising his eyebrow with amusement. But he quickly turned his gaze to June, who was talking to Bradley about something. There was a hint of interest in his eyes. He found that June's thought was unexpectedly matching with his. He walked casually up to June and Bradley, and gently tapped the table in front of Thane. "Hey, do you want to have lunch together after class?" He was knocking on Bradley's table, but his eyes were on June. Wayne looked at Jack and was stunned. He had not seen Jack invite a girl to lunch before this time. June looked at Jack in front of her and smiled politely, "Thank you, but no." Wayne was wide-eyed, as he could not believe that she rejected Jack. But Jack was not angry, and he had no expectations but just thought the girl was not bad, and he wanted to befriend her since she had rejected his invitation. He was not going to pursue any further. He looked back at Wayne, inviting him to lunch together. Wayne obliged, and Jack went back to his seat. As he walked past June, he could not help and take a few glances at her. June let him be, and she ever returned a friendly smile. Wayne scratched the back of his head as he began to like the girl. Ever since she stopped putting on airs, she had become a lot lovelier. Bradley was a little surprised to see what happened, but he said nothing when he saw June did not mind. The monthly exam was just around the corner, so most likely, June did not want to be distracted. He nodded and gave June a thumbs up in his mind. Meanwhile, Lulu looked at June's expression thoughtfully. June was having this attitude probably because Jack was not the type of guy she liked. Life was brilliant at night in the city. Solomon was spending his days in a membership clubhouse, holding a glass of whiskey in his left hand and a pretty girl in his right, but he still felt empty inside. He looked at the young face in front of him, but the woman with the cold and pretty face of yesterday kept flashing in his mind's eye, in which he saw her look at him with beautiful and sassy eyes, as if there was ice and brilliant lights in them. It made the woman in his arms suddenly feel uninteresting. This was probably the difference between mortal and heavenly women. Had she not been uncooperative, he would not have thought of ruining her. How good it would be for her to be my woman, as I would treat her very well, he thought. The thought of how fast she drove, so fast that she left him in the dust, and that he could not even take a glimpse of her beautiful face, a look of regret filled his face. Thank you for listening. If you have enjoyed this story, please like and share so others can see it too. Also hit the subscription button and notification bell so you can be notified on our next release. Thank you for your support. God bless you.